Okay, class. So now that we've kind of had a chance to discuss the story, write down our thoughts, get some, feelings out there because I know it was a little bit of a twist at the end. Um, I want to get into it, kind of talk about themes and lenses that we can find in the story and that we can apply to the short story. Before we get into that, I just want to work on some definitions in the story. I know the language is a little bit different to what we're used to now. Queer back then was used for something that was a little bit weird, strange, or foreign to the person. Tonic is just what you would call medicine. Congenial is kind of like a bias for you. It's easy, it's your go-to because it's something that you like, you enjoy. Skulk, keep out of sight. It's kind of like hiding because you've got ulterior motives, right? She uses it to describe the woman in the wallpaper. A bureau, a chest of drawers, like that one. Frieze, horizontal line that runs along the wall near the ceiling. I want to say crown molding. I could be wrong, but it's just, a line that run. It's kind of just trying to give you an image of what the wallpaper looked like on her wall, right? So let's get into it. Definitions for the lesson. Themes. So central topic, subject, or message within a narrative. What is the author trying to say with her work, right? Critical lenses. A way of looking at a work of literature, focusing on style choices, plot devices, and character interactions, and how they show a certain theme. It is a common literary analysis technique. It is what it is, right? Analysis technique. You're kind of just looking at how did the author write this story? What devices did they use? And how do the characters sort of act and speak to each other to kind of make a point, or that point that the narrator is trying to make, right? So let's talk about what women were facing when she published this, right? So women in 1892. After marriage, you were not allowed to own property, make or keep your own wages, or sign any significant contracts or documents. You were basically at your husband's mercy. You were his property. Women were denied the right to vote until the 1920s. 1850 is kind of, it's not too accurate. I would say 1840s is when women started to convene and form groups that would fight for women's rights. Women relied on their husband's opinions in regards to their health. So before a woman actually went and saw a doctor, you would tell your husband, hey, feeling kind of, this or that. He could be like, you're being silly. End of discussion. It is what it is, right? Women who suffered from depression and anxiety were diagnosed with hysteria. Hysteria is just, has a very long, sort of convoluted history, but it wasn't actually taken out of like the textbook for mental illnesses until 1950. So it was actually something that women had to fight to kind of get rid of because they saw it as oppressive. And of course it was, because you were just being dismissed for what your depression and anxiety were, right? So let's get into it. Themes in the Yellow Wallpaper. So definitely we can talk about gender roles, right? We see how her husband is sort of making all of the decisions for her. He moves her into a home for the summer because she's not doing well. And he thinks, well, as long as we get you out of the house, you're going to be doing better. He's in charge. He doesn't let her get rid of the wallpaper because he's like, if I humor you for one thing, I'm going to have to get rid of the couches and the beds, blah, blah, blah. We're kind of seeing this very big imbalance between her and her husband, right? Women's roles in the marriage. Again, she's kind of talking about how she feels like an inconvenience to him, right? Because she's feeling ill. She can't take care of her baby because it makes her nervous. Again, that nervousness could be referring to postpartum depression, right? And we'll get into that in the mental illness one. But again, the roles, how she talks about feeling inferior to her sister-in-law because her sister-in-law can run the house, right? When that's supposed to be her job. How her sister-in-law entertains the guests that they have over for the 4th of July, right? And then mental illness and how it's handled. So we see that she's become nervous after having her child. She talks about how she can't be around the baby because it makes her nervous, right? He laughs about her being a nervous person. And that just comes to being like, he's kind of dismissing her, right? Dismissing how she's telling him, I don't feel well, I'm still feeling really tired, I'm still feeling sort of like she's just not doing well. And he's kind of just like, you're doing fine. I don't think you need to be making so many trips to see your doctor. Not necessary, not relevant, because he thinks he knows better, right? So basically just mental illness and how it's being just mishandled, not being addressed in the proper way. Conformity versus expression. We see how she thinks that writing makes her feel better, right? Or she knows that writing makes her feel better. She wants to write because she feels like she's getting all of the inner like doubts and all of the inner like the nervousness, the depressive thoughts. Basically, she gets them out by writing. And both her husband and her sister-in-law tell her, oh, it's going to make you more tired. Maybe you should just rest. You should just sleep. He's not allowing her to be herself, right? Because she's telling him, this makes me feel good. This is what I like to do. This is what I'm finally feeling like a breakthrough. He doesn't want to hear it, right? So those are the themes. And we can talk about maybe finding a couple more. Application of lenses. So lenses, again, we want to it's a literary analysis, right? We kind of want to just think about what the author was trying to say. How did she write the story in a certain way so that we can apply these lenses? So again, gender, we're looking at those differences between her and her husband, how he has more of an authority, how he seems to be level-headed, how the narrator keeps sort of declining because she's so confined with her roles, right? How she has to be reliant of her husband, even though he doesn't address the way that she's feeling. Psychoanalytical, we're talking about why was she acting the way that she did? Of course, postpartum depression, why did she see the woman in the wall? Because it's a reflection of how she was feeling in her marriage, right? How she was feeling trapped in those gender roles. She was trapped in her marriage, trapped in the wall. Historical, we can apply a historical lens because we can read it as how were the women treated? How was mental illness treated back then in 1892? I'm sorry, I'm mixing up my dates. How were the women treated in the 1800s, right? How were their illnesses addressed? How were their worries addressed? How did we try to solve those things in the 1800s? And then again, feminist lens. Why did she write it? Did she write it to villainize the husband? No, maybe she wrote it just to say like, we need to progress, right? We need to progress. We need to give women more of an authority, more of a voice. If I feel a certain way, I should be able to go and see my doctor, right? Not rely on a husband that doesn't know what I'm feeling too well, right? So let's get into it. For your exit ticket, we want to do group work first, right? 15-20 minutes. Kind of just want you guys to come together and talk about what claim, statement, or criticism the author was trying to make with the story. Kind of giving you my spiel. I want to know what you think. You've had your time to do the quick write in the beginning. Get some feelings out. I want you guys to come together, talk about it. What was the author trying to say with this story? Can you think of another lens that we can apply to the story? If you have any questions, come to me. I can help you with the lens definition. We can talk about them. We can discuss them. We can see about what fits. And then we're going to come back together after those 15-20 minutes. And I just want us all to discuss in groups. What did we talk about? What was everybody's idea? What did everybody get from the story? If you find a new lens, great. We'll talk about it. We'll try to apply it. Let's talk about what this author was trying to say, why she wrote this story. Great. And we'll come back together.